Hey, my name is Ramirez. I'm Frog Bear. You can call me Rami. Today, we're going to be talking about industry in health. And yes, I worded that correctly. Today, we're going to be talking about teeth and facial muscles. Not too much on the facial muscles since I predominantly want to focus on the health of the teeth. So, during the time I was doing research for myself in trying to figure out holistic healing. One of the things I discovered very early on was there's a motive, right? In anything, in fitness, in clothing, in appliances. It is not about selling you a really good product. It is primarily to sell you something with the focus of having you return. I'm mainly highlighting the fact that this was well-known information that there were certain things that could destroy your teeth. With that in mind, the industry decided to never do anything to help you with the health of your teeth, let alone educate you in any of this. So we're gonna start off with a TikTok video from this gal here. Let's see if I could turn on the media viewer.
Can you believe that our ancestors had almost no tooth decay? In the 1930s, Weston A. Price travelled to 14 different countries to research tribal populations and their nutrition. By looking at generations of communities before and after the Western diet was introduced, he discovered that native people who ate traditional foods had beautiful, straight teeth, free from decay, good physiques, and no recorded chronic disease.
Right? And this was well known, completely well known. And that same individual would also take not just older people, but younger people as well to see how their teeth structure would develop. And he did this across the board.
Whereas those who consumed a modern diet including sugar, white flour, pasteurized milk, and convenience foods had tooth decay. There was also evidence of abnormal facial patterns and susceptibility to certain diseases. So what did these
And susceptibility to certain diseases. So, I'm only here to bring up the uncomfortable truth, which is the industry does not give a fuck about you and or me. The industry, by and large, has no real incentive for us to live a healthy life. And I will prove that a bit further.
traditional diets all have in common? They all included nutrient-dense animal foods, such as butter, fish eggs, shellfish, organ meats, eggs, and animal fats.
And it's not just that. There's much more to this, right? This video is on my Telegram group. You can download Telegram. It's an application. Most people would recommend it. Most people would recommend that you download it from the website because the one on the Google Play Store is altered from the original code. So some people just highly suggest for you to go to the website to download Telegram directly. And once you're there, hit the search bar, type in frogbear.zil, and that's how you'll find me. Or that's how you'll find my Telegram group. Here, where was it? Oh, it's not opening up. Here it is. Now, this is a video that I discovered, or at least it was recommended to me. Don't remember when. This was a few years ago when I first started learning holistic health. Let's move on.
Is the structure of your face 100% determined by your genes? Or can you change the bone structure of a person's face without surgery? Here we have a 10-year-old boy with a
That's a very important question. Is everything about you determined immediately from your genetic code, or can you alter it? Is there still some breathing room for you to alter the state of you as an existence?
strong jawline, and overall good-looking face, who went on to develop flat cheeks, a receded chin, a weak jawline, and a slight hook in the nose by the age of 17. If this was the work of genes, why would they work hard to make a good-looking face until age 10, but slack off after that? Well, right around age 10, the boy got a pet gerbil, which he kept in his bedroom. He was allergic to the animal, and his nose became stuffy and obstructed,
causing him to nose breathe.
forcing him to separate his lips, lower his tongue, and open his mouth, otherwise he couldn't breathe. Next, take a look at these two brothers. Ben has a slightly flatter and longer face, where Quentin's face seems to have grown more forwards rather than vertically. I think most would agree that Quentin's face is
Now, I know what you guys are saying. What the hell does this have to do with teeth? But this has more to do with the fact that it is... People like to look at health problems as singularities. They don't like looking at the whole picture. They don't like understanding that all of these things are interconnected. Essentially, fully deciding that if you don't eat the correct foods that are healthy for your teeth, you also won't develop proper facial muscles, or at least the muscles that connect. Either way, I'll just keep playing.
it's a bit more attractive. So, did Quentin just get lucky and get the better genes? Probably not, because what's striking about these brothers is that they are identical twins. The only difference is that one had traditional orthodontic treatment, and the other was treated by Dr. John Mew.
This is what I wanted to get to. We look at problems as singularities. This would have never happened if the kids just ate a more natural diet. This would have not happened if they had correct... Well, he hasn't mentioned it yet. But again, this all comes down to, can I make money off of you? This is where the whole question lies. If you look at this grainy footage, you can tell this was either at the late 90s or the early 2000s. So this was well-known information. What happened to the science? Is the science settled? Should we just continue using dentists? Should we still continue using braces for fixing this issue? Or is it better for us to immediately, from kids, to teach them how to properly chew, how to properly develop those muscles so that their teeth don't end up...
With what's called an orthotropic treatment.
I can't get there yet.
Orthotropics and its principles are extensively discussed on the Orthotropics YouTube channel by Drs. Mike and John Mew. Simply put, it is a method for achieving proper development of the face. Developed in 1966, the general goal of orthotropics is to guide the upper and lower jaws to grow forwards.
Right, these are before and after pics.
Here's another example of orthotropic treatment on a little girl where Dr. Kevin...
Okay, let's move a little bit forward.
would suggest, the development of the facial skeleton is not fixed. The bones of the skull are held together by fibrous joints called sutures. The maxilla, the bone of the upper mouth, is connected to the cranium and face by several sutures. And the interesting part is that these sutures are not fused together. New bone can still be made at the sutures, even in adults. In fact, certain sutures do not begin to fuse until 68 to 72 years of age.
68 to 72 years of age. So that means your facial structure is completely alterable all the way up until you're 60. Yet, it's unpopular to want to eat healthy. It's unpopular not to believe the guy in the white coat. It's unpopular not to take all of these popular treatments when in reality, right? I'm just saying that there are alternative solutions, but they're not highlighted. They're never talked about. I've known about this video for quite some time now, and I'm pretty sure I found it when I started doing my body transformation, but I was more focused on losing weight, so I just ignored this video overall. But this video, I think now I remember that this video came out, at least it was recommended to me when I was looking into how to train the neck and how to train the jaw, because those are two unique muscles that tie into certain aesthetics training. It's a whole other conversation.
Which is why the positioning of bones of the skull can be useful information in forensics and archaeology. As Dr. Felix Liao, author of 6 Foot Tiger, 3 Foot Cage, explains, the potential for maxillofacial redevelopment is alive even late in adult life. Here's one example from the orthotropic. So what about adults changing their facial skeleton for the better? Here's one example from the Orthotropics YouTube channel. Here's another from Dr. John Mew's website. And in this research article by Professor G. Dave Singh, what they call facial enhancement has been achieved in a 19 and 26-year-old by applying orthotropic principles for only 1 year. The 26-year-old's eyeliner is giving her a bit of an advantage in the second photo, so let's cover that up. If you look closely, you'll see the 26-year-old has a more pronounced jaw, and the face has come forward a bit, which makes the mid-face appear fuller. In fact, 12 adults in total participated in the study, and several facial angles were measured to track objective change in the face.
And you want to know what helps all this? One of the most interesting muscles in the body.
Can we move the bones of the face around to have a better functioning, better looking face? Well, one simple way is to follow what John Mew calls the tropic premise. Rest the tongue on the palate with the lips sealed and the teeth in light contact for 4 to 8 hours a day. This might not sound like a big deal, but the tongue is a relatively big muscle and can exert plenty of force on the maxilla. It's plausible that having this large muscle press up and forwards on the maxilla for 8 hours a day, and hopefully while you're sleeping, over a few years, can make small but noticeable changes in the structure of the face.
It isn't this video, but I also remember watching another video that same tongue posture and that same sealing of the lips causes certain aspects of your nasal cavities to open up in such a way that it helps becoming more of a nose breather. And nose breathing also relates, right? Nose versus mouth breathing also relates to people snoring at night. And the fact that they don't breathe through their nose, so that's where a lot of snoring comes from, is the fact that a lot of people don't actually use or utilize nasal cavity muscles. And if you don't ever use them and you reach the age of 30, you end up developing what my father has, which is immense snoring. Like, he snores. I've never heard anybody snore that loud in my life. But it all has to do with nose breathing.
But hold on a moment, these improvements I just showed you were made using appliances that fit in the mouth and exert.
He also tries finding examples of like just normal people that you can find in normal life, but not very good. There is one YouTuber that I know gets a lot of play, but it's because he took it to the extreme. Like, he trained his jaw so much that his chin just exudes, I want to say, like 1.5 inches. So he does look a bit, no offense, freaky, but it's because, you know what I mean? You could take those jaw muscles a little too extreme. These aren't those cases, though.
Another effect of having the tongue on the roof of the mouth is that, especially when young, it widens the dental arch, which helps to have straight teeth. Though I think most would assume that straight or crooked teeth are genetic.
Obfuscating the truth with genetics. This is why I thought it was hilarious. Where everybody likes to think that genetics is what largely dictates all of these little things, when in reality, if you live a natural life, these problems wouldn't exacerbate. But because we've changed our diets, we've changed our way of living, it has completely changed our physiological body. This is a very uncomfortable truth. Nobody wants to admit this, because admitting this requires you to entertain the idea that the food industry does not have your best interest in mind. It requires you to understand that the government and its policies and its senators and its legislators and its representatives, its lobbyist groups, do not have your best interest in mind. This is an industry. And what's happened, right? Let's put the best example ever. Why did we not use the electricity that Nikola Tesla wanted to promote? I can't remember which one was AC or DC. But why didn't that happen? And a lot of it was because they couldn't meter it. The voltage was so high that they actually couldn't put a meter on it to check how much electricity use was being used. So we went with Thomas Edison instead, where you could actually meter it and charge people per unit. That's all they wanted. They wanted to charge you over time. And with this is your teeth we're talking about. Look at the candy industry. Look at the sugar industry.
So if it's not genetic, what causes crooked teeth? In this paper by Dr. Kevin Boyd, he states that dental caries, as in cavities, and malocclusion, which means misaligned or crooked teeth, while now highly prevalent public health diseases, are both surprisingly rare within the pre-industrial skeletal and prehistoric fossil records.
Pre-industrial skeletal. I like how he used that word.
And also seldom seen in many present-day, non-westernized cultures. This is very striking, considering according to Prophet's 1994 Contemporary Orthodontics, 2/3 of the US population has some degree of malocclusion, misalignment of the teeth. Yet, malocclusion with a known cause is listed as only 5% of the population. That leaves 60% of people with malocclusion for unknown reasons. In 1939, an American dentist named Weston Price traveled around the world examining the oral health of both civilized groups living on modern foods and isolated groups living on native diets.
And this is why I remembered this video, was because that chick was also using the same guy as a reference point. And I was like, oh, I remember that.
He published his results in a book titled Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. What's most interesting is the pictures in the book. Here we have girls from isolated valleys of Switzerland and children from modernized districts of Switzerland. Here we have native Alaskan Inuit people, also called Eskimos. And on the right, we have the first generation of children born after the parents adopted a modern lifestyle. Notice how there is some wear on the teeth, especially on this person, but the teeth are straight. Here we have isolated Native Americans and the first generation Native Americans with a modern lifestyle.
So what is it? Is it genetics? Or is it the things that we do in our lives that affect us and our development? It's a very important question that we need to ask ourselves, because a lot of people have seemed to confuse genetics because they don't realize that that science was largely dictated by people like Madison Grant, who later inspired Hitler, which is hilarious to me because Madison Grant and his cohort of scientists that were all funded by the Carnegies, that were all funded by the Ford Institute, all of them did not study the science and came to a conclusion. They already had a conclusion. They already had in mind what result they wanted, and it was entirely based on keeping wasps out. It was entirely based on keeping out Eastern Europeans, keeping out undesirable whites from entering America, that they developed the entire science of genetics based on that. People do not want to admit that, but it's like, dude, we're literally repeating what happened 100 years ago, like with the Great Reset. People just do not want to admit that.
Lifestyle. Then we have Samoans, a tribe in Belgian Congo,
Let's see what else we got.
and for proper growth and development. But for this video, we'll look at how a different characteristic of the diet can affect growth of the skull. Biological anthropologist Clark Spencer Larson says that agriculture instigated a fundamental change in human craniofacial growth and development. He highlights the use of cooking vessels as an impactful innovation because it allowed for humans to make soft, mushy food that required little chewing. He says such culinary adaptations resulted in fundamental changes in craniofacial growth and development, resulting in reduced robustness, increased malocclusion, and increased tooth crowding. So, where people in the past were gnawing on very tough, fibrous, low-calorie plant foods, as well as raw and cooked meat, maybe having to chomp through skin, cartilage, and sinew, now they could make porridges and maybe some stews that provided much more calories for less chewing effort. One piece of evidence for the significance of having to chew much more and harder to get the same amount of calories is the fact that skulls found with good occlusion, with straight teeth.
No, this is not the one I wanted. There is another aspect of this, and it comes down to baby food, which is what I wanted to get to. Here he talks about how the Western diet also completely changed the wear and tear that we have on our teeth, and how hunter-gatherers or just eating tougher foods would basically, you know what I mean? Like if you got sandpaper, that's all he's basically describing. But he also describes that because that food is tough, it develops these two different parts of the muscles that are involved in facial muscles. But this is what I wanted to
Of having soft foods early in life, dental arch. But there's an unexpected effect of having soft foods early in life. The idea is that when a baby is weaning off breast milk, if they move on to hard foods, they would have to develop a different swallowing pattern. If you have a straw or bottle nearby, you can test yourself to see what I mean. Your swallowing pattern when you suck down liquid is different when you chew up something hard and swallow it down. So if you wean the baby onto soft, mushy foods that can be suckled down, the baby doesn't develop a proper swallowing pattern. The swallowing pattern you want to develop is where your tongue pushes tightly up against the palate to pull the food into the esophagus. What you don't want is to swallow with your tongue sucking on your teeth. It's estimated that humans swallow around 600 times.
Right? It's also why they tell you it's also what they say of not allowing a baby or a kid growing up on a pacifier too much, because it will misalign their front portion of their teeth
Per day, with about 2 pounds of force against the palate. This frequent force exerted on the palate, as well as your resting tongue posture, can affect the dental arch. Quite simply put, if the tongue isn't exerting force on the roof of the mouth and pushing the teeth outwards, they can come to cave in. The upper arch should form like this, thanks to the tongue pressing against the teeth, preventing the pressure of the cheeks from pushing them in. But if the tongue isn't holding the teeth in place, the teeth can get crowded inwards.
And welcome to the modern day and how we have our problems today. But all of this right? All of this is trying to be attempted to be fixed with braces, which I heard are a pretty painful experience. I never had braces, as you can tell. But it is completely interesting to me that we have complete and utter blind faith in doctors, in the science, in the institutions. And we would like to assume that they have our best interest in mind, and we do not want to believe that they would lie to us. We wouldn't want to believe that this entire infrastructure that was put before us is a lie or a facade. And in reality, I think it's more than ever time to admit that what we were told is not necessarily correct. And moving forward from that position, I think, is the best overall position to make, considering what's happened these last few years. But of course, this is going to take years and years of lobbying, of educating people, and spreading the message. Because I've never heard of this. Like, I've researched a lot of things, and I don't think anybody's put two and two together in a more meaningful way that describes how our diets, our facial muscles, our teeth, and our overall physiological body is a result of the habits that we have. So at least it's important to quantify that to you watching this video. How to change that? Well, now you know, you just gotta chew. And that's why it's important to chew your food. Because now more than ever, right? Because we're eating such soft and mushy food, people just swallow their food. They're just like, I don't have to chew all that much. Let alone, I don't know. This gets into a whole lot of other stuff. But this is Ramirez. Hopefully I taught you a little bit more about health and how the industry itself does not really care about you. But my name's Ramirez.